Precious sat on the small plastic chair in her husband's mother's sitting room, her hands resting on her round belly. The old woman's voice cut through the air like a blade. "So this is the useless girl my son brought home from that poor family. God forbid," she hissed. Precious kept quiet, her eyes fixed on the floor. Her husband, Kelvin, sat silently beside her, pretending not to hear his mother's insults. Each word hurt Precious deeply, but she had learned to stay calm for her unborn child's sake. Days turned into weeks, and the hostility never stopped. Mama Kelvin shouted over every little thing. Food too salty, clothes not folded well, water not fetched on time. "You want to kill me before my time, Abi?" she would bark. One evening, Kelvin returned late from work, smelling of alcohol. Precious tried to speak to him softly, but he pushed her aside. "You and my mother are always complaining," he shouted. Mama Kelvin entered immediately, her voice rising higher. "You see your wife? She has no respect. These village girls don't deserve good men." Precious burst into tears, begging for peace. But Mama Kelvin pushed her hard, shouting, "Leave my house today! I said leave!" Precious clutched her belly and stumbled backwards. Kelvin just stood there, confused and weak. Before she could explain herself, Mama Kelvin's legs struck her stomach. Precious screamed in pain and collapsed. The night fell silent. Kelvin rushed forward, shouting her name, but it was too late. Precious lay unconscious, blood on her wrapper, her child's fate unknown. When Precious opened her eyes, she was lying on her hospital bed. Her head felt heavy, her throat dry, and her stomach throbbed with sharp pain. A nurse stood beside her, adjusting a drip. "Madam, take it easy. You are lucky to be alive," the nurse said softly. Precious tried to sit up, fear in her eyes. "My baby, please, my baby," she whispered. The nurse looked away for a moment and then said, "The baby is still alive, ma, but you need rest." Precious burst into tears, relief mixing with pain. Hours later, she realized Kelvin hadn't come. Not once. She begged the nurse to call him, but no one answered. The next morning, the doctor told her the bills had not been paid and that she had to leave. Precious felt her heart sink. She had nowhere to go. Her own parents had died years ago, and she had given up her small tailoring job when she got married. As she sat outside the hospital gate, holding her stomach and crying, a kind old woman named Mama Rose noticed her. "My daughter, why are you crying here?" she asked. Precious explained everything. Mama Rose shook her head in pity. She said, "Some women are wicked. Come and stay in my house. God will fight for you." Precious followed her, limping with pain. Days passed into weeks as she healed slowly. She gave birth safely to a baby boy whom she named Destiny. Each time she looked at him, her heart broke and healed at the same time. She made a promise to herself that night. No matter how hard life became, she would rise again for Destiny's sake. Months passed and Precious slowly began to rebuild her life. She stayed with Mama Rose, who treated her like a daughter. Every morning, Precious tied her baby to her back and sold puff puff and akara by the roadside. Life was tough, but she smiled through it. People would often ask, "Madam, where your husband?" And she would just say softly, "He traveled." Deep inside, the wound still burned. One afternoon, while frying akara under the hot Benin sun, Precious saw Kelvin's car drive past. Her heart jumped. He looked well fed, with another woman sitting beside him, laughing, carefree. Precious turned away quickly, tears mixing with the heat on her face. "So after everything, he moved on," she whispered. That night, she couldn't sleep. Mama Rose sat beside her and said, "My daughter, don't cry again. Sometimes God allows people to push us out so He can lift us up." Those words struck her heart deeply. Precious wiped her tears and decided she would not die poor. She started saving every naira she could. When a local trader needed someone to help sew uniforms, Precious offered to learn tailoring again. She worked day and night, sometimes with Destiny sleeping beside her sewing machine. One day, a man named Mr. Adebayo came to the shop
to order clothes for his workers. He noticed how carefully Precious worked and told her, "You have a gift. If you ever need help, come to my office." Precious smiled shyly, not knowing that this small encounter would change her entire life. Weeks later, Precious decided to visit Mr. Adebayo's office to thank him for his kindness. He was surprised to see her, holding a small nylon bag of homemade puff-puff as a gift. "Ah, Madam Precious, you remembered me," he said warmly. She smiled shyly. "Yes, sir. I just came to greet you and say thank you for helping me that day." Mr. Adebayo was touched by her humility. He asked about her life and she told him everything. How her husband's mother threw her out, how she almost lost her baby, and how she now struggled to survive. He shook his head slowly. "You're a strong woman. I like your spirit," he said. A few days later, he invited her to work in his small construction company as an assistant tailor for the site uniforms. Precious accepted happily, balancing work with caring for Destiny. The more time she spent there, the more she learned, not just about sewing, but about land, buildings, and property. Mr. Adebayo noticed her sharpness and started teaching her about real estate. "One day, you will own your own land," he told her. Precious laughed. "Me? I don't even have money to buy slippers." He smiled and replied, "Faith is the beginning of wealth." Years rolled by, and Precious grew wiser and more confident. She saved, invested, and slowly started buying small lands to resell. The same girl who once cried on hospital floors was now driving deals across Benin. People began to call her Madam Landlady. Through all the progress, she never forgot Mama Rose, who stood by her like a mother. 5 years later, Precious was no longer the poor girl who sold akara by the roadside. She was now the proud owner of Destiny Homes, a growing real estate company known across Benin City. Her cars, her office, and her calm confidence turned heads everywhere she went. But even with all the money, she remained humble and grateful. Mama Rose, now older, stayed in a comfortable apartment Precious bought for her. One sunny afternoon, during a business meeting, she met David, a calm and handsome widower who had lost his wife years ago. David was a successful building contractor, intelligent, respectful, and kind-hearted. He treated Precious like a queen, not because of her money, but because of her heart. They became close friends first, sharing stories about pain, loss, and survival. "You are strong," David often told her. "You turned your scars into stars." Precious would blush and smile softly. Months later, David proposed to her. "Let me give you the peace you've been denied," he said. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she nodded yes. The wedding was simple but beautiful, filled with joy and laughter. Destiny, her son, loved David deeply and called him Daddy. For the first time in years, Precious felt safe, loved, and whole again. But peace doesn't last forever. One evening while watching TV with David, her phone rang. A strange number flashed on the screen. She hesitated before answering. The voice on the other end made her heart skip. It was Kelvin. "Precious, I know you are alive, and I'm coming for my child." Her hands trembled as she dropped the phone. Precious sat frozen, staring at the wall. David noticed her hands shaking. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. She whispered, "It's Kelvin. He found me." David frowned. "That man again? What does he want after all these years?" Precious sighed deeply. "He said he wants his child back." David's jaw tightened. "His child? The same man who watched his mother throw you out like trash over my dead body?" The next day, Kelvin arrived in Benin with his aging mother. They had both fallen from grace. Their business had collapsed, their house was gone, and they were drowning in debt. When they got to Precious's mansion gate, the guard stopped them. "Tell her I am here to see my wife and my son," Kelvin shouted, sweating under the sun. The guards exchanged looks. "Oga, Madam no get time for rubbish today," one of them said. Precious was upstairs when she heard the commotion. She came out slowly, dressed in a fine gown, her beauty glowing like gold. When Kelvin saw her, he froze. "Precious," he muttered, his voice weak. "You are rich now?" She looked him straight in the eyes. "Yes, by God's grace." Mama Kelvin's face twisted with shame. "So you didn't die?" Precious smiled faintly. "No, Mama. I lived and I prospered." The tension was thick. Kelvin dropped to his knees. "Please, I just want to see my son," he begged. David came out from the house, tall and firm. "Your son? You lost that right the day you abandoned them," he said coldly. Mama Kelvin shouted, "You can't talk to my son like that," and pushed him. David warned her to stop, but she raised her hand again, and that was when Precious stepped forward and said sharply, "Enough! You will not cause drama in my home." Kelvin stood up slowly, anger and embarrassment burning in his eyes. "Precious, you are still the same disrespectful woman." David moved closer, his voice calm but firm. "Watch your mouth, mister. This woman built her life from the ashes you left behind." Mama Kelvin hissed loudly. "Ashes? If she had respected her elders, she wouldn't have been thrown out. She bewitched my son."
Precious laughed bitterly. "Bewitched? You kicked a pregnant woman in the stomach, Mama. You almost killed your own grandchild. And now you stand here talking about respect?" Mama Kelvin's face twisted. "You deserved it. You brought bad luck to my family." Precious's voice rose. "No, Mama. You brought bad luck to yourself. You destroyed your home with your hatred." The argument grew hotter. Neighbors and workers gathered outside the gate, whispering. Kelvin stepped forward and shouted, "I just want to see my child." David blocked him firmly. "That child is my son now," he said. Kelvin's anger exploded. He pushed David, shouting, "Who gave you the right?" A fight broke out. The two men struggled, fists flying, until the guards rushed in to separate them. Precious screamed for them to stop, her voice cracking. When the fight ended, Kelvin was bleeding from the lip, breathing heavily. "This isn't over," he said coldly. "You stole my life, Precious." She looked him dead in the eyes and replied quietly, "No, Kelvin, you gave it away." He turned and walked off with his mother, leaving behind the same bitterness that once destroyed them. David helped Precious close. "They won't touch you again," he said. But deep inside, she knew this wasn't the end. Days passed, but Kelvin's visits kept haunting Precious. She couldn't sleep well. Every sound outside made her heart jump. David noticed the change and tried to comfort her. "Babe, forget that man," he said one night as they sat in bed. "He has no power here. You have me, you have destiny, and you have peace." Precious smiled faintly. "I know, but I can't help remembering everything he did. That pain never leaves." A week later, things took a darker turn. Kelvin showed up again, this time with two policemen. They walked straight to the gate holding papers. "We're here for my son," Kelvin said loudly. "I have every right to see him." The guards called Precious, and within minutes, she came out with David by her side. David frowned. "Officers, what's this about?" One of the policemen replied, "We got a report that this woman is holding a man's child illegally." Precious laughed in disbelief. "Illegally? This man abandoned me when I was pregnant. His mother nearly killed me." A small crowd gathered as voices rose. Kelvin pointed at Destiny, who was standing by the balcony. "That's my son. He deserves to know his real father." Precious's eyes filled with tears as she shouted, "You are not his father. You lost that title the night your mother kicked me out." The officers hesitated, unsure what to do. David stepped forward, showing papers of legal adoption. "That boy is mine by law and by love," he said firmly. The policemen looked at Kelvin and shook their heads. "Sir, you have no right here," one said before they left. Kelvin's face turned red with anger. "This isn't over, Precious," he shouted before storming away. Precious fell to her knees crying as David wrapped his arms around her. "It's okay, love. God is fighting for us," he whispered. Kelvin's pride was wounded. He couldn't accept defeat. That night, he sat in a cheap hotel room with his mother, pacing back and forth.
"Mama, that woman embarrassed me in front of everybody," he fumed. "Mama Kelvin, haste. You better take back what belongs to you. That boy is your blood. Go and fight for him in court." Kelvin slammed his fist on the table. "I will. She'll regret ever leaving me."
Meanwhile at home, Precious tried to focus on work, but the court notice came just 2 weeks later. She sat in her office, staring at the envelope with trembling hands. "David," she whispered, "is suing us for custody." David took the letter and sighed deeply. Let him try. The truth will always win. But the tension in the house grew. Destiny started asking questions. "Mommy, who is that man that keeps coming?" Precious knelt beside him, touched his face and said softly, "He's just someone from the past, my son. You don't need to worry." The court case began the next month. It became talk of the whole city. Precious arrived at the courthouse in a simple gown, her face calm but firm. Kelvin showed up with his mother, both dressed like victims. "My lord," Kelvin began, "I was deceived. She hid my son from me." Precious stood up sharply. "Lies! You and your mother threw me out when I was pregnant." The crowd gasped. The judge frowned. "Order in the court." David stood beside Precious, holding her hand tightly. "Tell the truth," he whispered. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she spoke about that painful night, about being kicked out and left to die. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge's eyes softened. Kelvin couldn't look at her. For the first time, guilt showed on his face. The courtroom was quiet as everyone waited for the judge's decision. Precious sat beside David, her eyes swollen from tears, but her spirit calm. Kelvin looked restless, and even his mother had stopped talking. The judge cleared his throat. "After reviewing the case and the evidence, it is clear that the plaintiff, Mr. Kelvin, abandoned the defendant, Precious, during pregnancy and took no responsibility for his child. The boy, Destiny, will remain in the custody of his legal parents, Precious and David." Gasps filled the room. Precious covered her face and cried softly, thanking God. Kelvin bowed his head in shame while his mother muttered angrily under her breath. The judge continued, "Mr. Kelvin, I advise you to seek forgiveness and make peace with your past before it destroys your future." Court dismissed. David hugged Precious tightly. "You won," he whispered. She smiled through tears. "No, we won. God fought for us." As they walked out of the courthouse, Kelvin ran after Precious. "Precious, wait," he called. She turned around slowly. "What do you want again, Kelvin?" He looked weak and broken. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything, for my mother, for the pain." Precious studied him quietly. "You should tell that to God, not me." He nodded sadly. "I lost everything because I didn't value you." She sighed. "Yes, you did, but life gave me another chance and I won't waste it." Months later, Precious and David built a charity home for single mothers. Mama Rose cut the ribbon proudly as Destiny ran around laughing. Precious smiled, watching her son grow strong and happy. She said softly, "From pain came power, from rejection came peace." She had finally found what her heart longed for, not revenge, but victory through grace. If this is your first time watching the channel, please like and subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, God bless you richly. Comment below and tell us where you're watching from.